What's up, everyone? Good night, good night, good night. This is Roxanne Francis, and I am the face behind Francis Psychotherapy. And tonight we're going to be talking to you about talking to your children about race. Hey, Megan, how's it going? Thanks for coming by. I hope you guys are doing well. Hey, Nicole. Hey, Nicole. Thanks, guys, for joining. We're going to be talking tonight about race. You know, there's been a lot of stuff in the news about race over the past month and a half, 2 months maybe. And initially there was a lot of buzz and a lot of talk. And much of it has died down as many people have sort of gone back to normal, the regular pattern of life, as much as things can be normal in the throes of COVID-19. But this is not something that will ever really go away. And so tonight I wanted to talk to you about how to talk to your children. If you have children around you, if you have biological children of your own, stepchildren, foster children, if you have nieces, nephews, hey Kelly, if you have grandchildren, godchildren, mentees, friends with children, this is something that you are going to want to listen in on. And I want this to be an interactive discussion. I don't want to be just sort of teaching, so to speak. So let me know what your thoughts are, and we can hash it out, right? Let me just get this music off out of here so we can get into it tonight. So, why do we need to talk about race? It's everywhere, guys. And, you know, people will say race is a social construct. Well, it might be, but it's certainly having an impact on all of us. It's having an impact on all of us as adults. And believe it or not, it's having an impact on our children. Because our children are not blind and they see things, right? Okay, so let's have a loose definition of racism. Most of you on here already know what that's all about, but it's really about ascribing certain positive traits or negative traits to a certain group of people based on the color of their skin. Hello, Sugar Plum Scrubs. Thanks for joining us. We're just getting into it tonight about race and our children. And I also wanted to talk about what privilege looks like. And a lot of people get really upset or offended or worried when we start using the word privilege, or we talk about the phrase white privilege. Well, I just want to sort of address that by giving it a different spin. When I was in school, and Nicole would know about this as well, they talked to us about privilege from the perspective of how you might be privileged as opposed to the next person. And it's not just something that's ascribed to people who live in white bodies. So, for example, I am what I might consider an able-bodied person. And so I have that privilege over someone who may be differently abled. I see clearly. I mean, I wear glasses, but I can see well. I don't have an impairment where that's concerned. And so I might have a privilege over someone who needs a guide dog or assistance to move around. I do not have a mental health difficulty that gives me great challenge. And so I have that privilege over someone else who does. Hey guys, thanks for joining. Come on in, let's talk it out. You know, many of you know I'm not, I don't hide this. I'm an immigrant. I am here from the Caribbean, and I've been here for a little bit over 20 years. And I used to say, you know, I don't have any privilege. I'm a Black woman. Well, my accent isn't as strong now, but I'm a Black woman. I have an accent. And I'm an immigrant. I'm from the Caribbean. And so I'm not privileged. Hey Celia, come on through. Just waving at you guys. However, I was able to realize that although I'm a Black woman, although I walk around with an accent, although I come from the Caribbean, those may be my identities, but even in those identities, I have privilege. So some people might call me privileged because I had the opportunity to relocate from a developing nation to a developed nation. And that term developed, that's another kettle of fish. We'll talk about it another time. But I also had the opportunity to access education. That makes me privileged over someone who was not able to access that education. I have privilege where I was able to find gainful employment. that gives me privilege over someone who either has precarious employment or is unemployed or is unable to work due to illness. So there's different ways of carrying that privilege, different ways that people carry privilege based on the lives that they have led. So I just want to sort of put that out there off the bat. But there is also, because of how our society is constructed, because of the systemic racial issues, there are issues around privilege that is ascribed because of the color of your skin. So if you live in a white body, you might have, it doesn't mean that your life has been easy. It doesn't mean that you were born in the lap of luxury. It doesn't mean that you don't struggle, but it means that those struggles were not a direct result of the color of your skin, particularly in this country and in Western society. All right. Now, where is the first place to start? You have children. Before we even start talking about talking to them, we need to start talking about where you stand on this issue. You have to reflect on your own stance before we even call a little one to sit down and start having this conversation. What do you think about this? Do you think that this whole privilege thing is ridiculous? Do you think that, well, no one gave me anything, so this is ridiculous? Do we think that racism is over, so we should stop talking about it? Do you think that, all these people have come to this country and they're taking away jobs? Like, we really need to sit down and think about where do we sit on these issues, because you can't, children are smart. We're no longer in the age of do as I say and not as I do. Is that how it goes? Yeah. Do as I say, not as I do. Children will call your bluff on that every single day. And so you can't be talking to them about equality and justice and equity when your perspective is something that is different. So think about where you are. And, I saw a meme the other day on social media where a man, was actually a photograph. A man was protesting and he was holding up a sign, a white man, and he was saying, I'm sorry I caught on really late, but I'm here now. And I just want to mention that if you are here on this live or watching this later and you're living in a white body and these are things that are new to you, that you are just learning about because of all of this racial unrest, and you're like, oh my goodness, the scales have been taken off my eyes and I'm beginning to realize what I've been living, and I feel really badly about it. The point of this is not for you to feel badly. The point of this is not for you to feel guilty. But the point of this is for you to really just take a look at life in general. Take a look at your life. Think about how you may have been complicit in all of this, and no one is pointing a finger at you. But it's similar to when you go on a hike and there's a little pebble in the bottom of your shoe. It's a little bit uncomfortable. And after a while, you have to take that shoe off and knock it out. And so I think a lot of what's happening over the past 2 months is that people are now recognizing that there's a pebble in their shoe. You can only walk so far with that. Hey, Chantal. So you can only walk so far with that pebble in the bottom of your shoe. So the point of all of this is to take that shoe off, knock it out, put it back on, and keep going, and teach your children to do the same. All right. As we get going, if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the little question box there, and I'll see if I can address them as we move on. Okay. So be patient with yourself. Give yourself grace. The other thing that I want to mention is that I want you guys to think about the history in this country. Canada is not exempt. Canada, while it's different from the United States, I don't know if any of you are on here if you're from the States. Throw up a heart if you're here from the States. But anyway, Canada may have a different history, but it does not mean that Canada gets away scot-free. Slavery existed here. There is evidence of buying and selling black bodies. We may not have been, and I say we, I mean Canada, may not have been a big part of the slave trade up and down the Ivory Coast, but bodies were being bought and sold here as well. Canada's laws were written to exclude black individuals. Hey, Mary! And there was a lot of racism and exclusion, not just of black bodies, but Indian bodies and Chinese bodies. Although people, Europeans, decades ago were encouraged to come here and they were given plots of land and money to farm the land, that was okay. But individuals from different countries that were not Europe, they were being excluded. And so we have to think about the history that's being taught in schools, because what's happened is that those with the pen get to write the history, and those with the pen have historically been white bodies, and so the history that they've written is really about white history. And if you look around in this great country of Canada, all of us are not white, so that history doesn't it may be a part of the history of this country, but it doesn't speak to me, doesn't reflect who I am. And so I have to be mindful of that. My children, I have 2 children, and they're going to be coming up through this education system. Let's see, what else? The treatment of the First Nations, of peoples of this country, is absolutely horrific. And it's not being addressed in our history books in school. And that is something that I have big, big problems with. And that's something that we all should have problems with, and we should talk about it with our kids when the time is right. All right. I digress. So let's go on to why we need to talk about this with our children. All right. One of, let's see, Mary says, the pen needs to be shared. Everyone's stories need to be told. Amen to that. All right. Hey, Rashida. Thanks for joining me. So what else? One of my friends saw my post today, and she said, one of the posts said that it's a fallacy that children don't see color. A lot of people will say, oh, I don't see color. And we've talked about in past why that's problematic. We need to see and acknowledge that everyone's different, right? And I think what people mean is that color is not a thing for me. It's not a defining issue. It doesn't result in me treating people negatively. And that's different. But saying I don't see color, that's a little bit problematic. Now, children, on the other hand, children do see color. Hey, Ashiana, come on through. Children see color, and they notice it. That doesn't mean that they are racist in any way, because that is something that is actually taught. However, research has shown that children as young as 6 months, they notice difference in skin tone. They just don't know how to tell you, right? They notice the difference in skin tone. By the time children are 3 years old, they start to ascribe positive and negative characteristics to people's skin tone as young as 3, guys. And by the time they are 4 or 5 years old, they will start to develop their own racial biases. This is why it's important to talk to our children about race. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to make it a huge, huge issue. It doesn't have to be a big history lesson when you go to sit down to talk to your child about it. But it does mean that we need to recognize that it becomes an issue if we don't talk to them about it. One example that I have heard of is when an individual is in, let's say you take your kid to the grocery store. Your child is 5 or 6 years old, and maybe they're walking beside you or in the cart, and they might see someone, let's say you're white and you're in the grocery store and you live in a white neighborhood generally, and you see someone in Superstore who's black. Excuse me, and the child says to you, Mommy, Daddy, why does that person look different? And the parent might snatch the child and say, shh, and it gives the impression that we don't talk about that. Rashida says, they absolutely see color. I was working at a childcare center once, and one of the preschoolers asked me if I taste like chocolate ice cream. Oh, see? They see color. And Rashida, you're just amazing. You're amazing and sweet. So that's one of the reasons why they asked you if you tasted like chocolate ice cream. But also, too, it speaks to the fact that this child was unfamiliar with having black bodies in their environment, right? And so they notice it. They totally see it. It doesn't mean that they see a person with a different skin tone and think that person is bad or evil or I won't play with you. That's another thing. I'll get to that in a minute. But if we, hey Natasha, if we give children the impression that this is not something to be talked about, then the impression that they get is, or that what they learn from us is that it's bad to talk about it, right? It doesn't mean that they no longer notice it. They notice it, but they have now gotten from us, we don't talk about that. That's no, no. It's a bad thing to talk about. And so they continue to notice it and they continue to make their own judgments and assumptions and ascriptions, but they won't come and talk to us about it because we just shut them up, right? Okay. Now I was just talking about being in school and kids saying, I won't play with you. Parents will say things like, especially black parents will say like, I sent my kid to school and they experienced racism in junior kindergarten. And I can't understand why racism exists in junior kindergarten. And believe me, it's hurtful. When you send your kid to school and someone says, a kid says, I won't talk to you because you look like this, that's a problem. Now, I think a couple of things could have happened. One, the child could be hearing these things from the adults around them, like children who are darker than you are this or that, or they'll hear talk around the dinner table, or they're watching things on the news and they're picking up on certain things, right? The other thing that could happen is that, guys, kids can be mean. If we don't teach them to be nice, kids can be mean. If children are not in loving environments at home, kids can be mean. If children are experiencing violence or emotional abuse or verbal abuse in the home, kids can be mean. And so you can send your kid to school and they might be the only one in blue runners, and someone else might say to them, I'm not playing with you because you're wearing blue runners, right? It means that that child, they have now identified a difference in that child and they've decided to pull away from them because of that difference. Now, for an Indian child or a Chinese child or a child of African descent, that difference might mean their skin tone or the wave of their hair or the shape of their nose, right? And so the other children may not be inherently racist, but they are picking out a difference and they are preying on that child because of that difference. Rashida said, it was sweet because I realized that it was a teachable moment for her and myself. She really was just curious and associated my complexion with something she was familiar with. Yes. And I think it was great that it was a good association because I've heard parents say that their children came home in tears saying, Johnny won't play with me because my skin looks like poop, right? That's not a kind association. So teach your children to be kind. Seriously. Teach your children to be nice. One of the ways that I do that is I watch cartoons with my kids when I can. Sometimes I kind of turn on the TV and I have to exit the room, but when I can, I watch cartoons with them. And when a child on the TV or a character on the TV is hurt or crying or upset, I make that a teachable moment. Maybe it's because I'm a therapist, I'm a social worker, it's the thing that I do. My husband rolls his eyes at me sometimes, but I use it as a teachable moment. What's going on here? How do you think they feel? How do you think they can make it better? And once the situation is resolved at the end of the show, I ask them what they thought about that, right? It goes a long way, I think, in helping to teach your child empathy. Once your child learns empathy, they're unlikely to ostracize the other children at school for any particular difference, whether that difference is waving your hair, the shape of your nose, the tone of your skin, or the color of your shoes. Children are unlikely to do that once they've been taught empathy. All right. Let's see. So one of the ways that we can teach children about race is by celebrating differences, right? As I was mentioning before, it doesn't have to be, sit down, we're going to have this big conversation, but celebrate differences in the world. I'm always giving personal examples on here. You guys have probably heard this before. But my older child, when he was, I think, in SK or grade one, he came home and he said, how come he couldn't have peach complexion like his teachers at school? And I was like, "Erks? What now?" I was stunned, right? And I asked him what he meant by that. And he said to me that my teachers are white and my daycare provider is white. And that was when I began to realize that my kid is immersed in this white environment. I I was shocked. I walked away from the conversation thinking, Roxanne, you gotta shake this up. And I did. But in the moment, I asked him what he meant by that. Because my sweet children, they didn't know. We don't talk about, maybe that's something that I need to fix, guys. Help me out here. But we don't really talk about black and white in our home. We let them take the lead on describing people's skin tone. And so they call our family brown because that's the shade of our skin. It's brown. It's not black. They don't understand what black is. Like, this stapler is black. Mommy, we're not black. We're brown. So I go with that. And people that are white, they call them peach. Maybe it's because of the box of crayons. I don't know. But I just go with it. And he wanted to know how come all the other people were peach and he was black. And so I had to sit down with him and I said to him, okay, let's talk about your friends at school. And I am familiar with his classroom, so I was able to go down the friend list, and I know that such and such is Indian, and such is Chinese, and such is biracial, and such is has brown skin like him. And so we went down the list and we said, okay, not everybody has peach skin. How about so and so and so and so and so and so? And his principal is now Indian, and so we were able to get through that. And then we started talking about our personal extended circles. So his aunties, his uncles, his godparents, his aunties that we have co-opted into our family, like Auntie Nicole and so on and so on. We talked about them and he was like, oh yeah. And then I said, just like how there's different kinds of flowers, there's different kinds of people. And the world would be boring if it was only one kind of flower. We love red roses, but if it was only red roses all over the place, we'd get really bored. But we don't get bored because when we walk down the street in the springtime, we see tons of flowers in people's yards and they're so beautiful and they're so varied. And he was like, yeah. And then up and out. That's another thing I want to talk about. When you are talking about race with children, please be specific. Then yeah, sit down at the kitchen table. Then it could be a big dissertation conversation, right? But if you're talking to a 7-year-old, they just need to know. They just need to answer what asked. Treat it like you're in court. You don't need to give a big elaborate answer. Just answer what they asked you. That's all they need. Nicole says, we have to remember we are role models to our children, so our level of comfort will add to their positive or negative curiosity. Who is on your friends list or friendship circle? Yes, yes, yes. I totally agree with that wholeheartedly. So celebrating differences. So who are the different people in your life? Who are the people who have different skin tone than you? Who are the people who come from different countries? Who are the people from, we're a Jamaican household, but we know people who are Guyanese, who are from Trinidad, who are descendants of people who come from Taiwan, who, are from different places in the world. And so we talk about that stuff, right? Talk about that with your kids. When you guys go out to restaurants, not now, COVID-19, but when the world opens up again, it's slowly opening up. When it opens up again and you're having meals from around the world, if you're going to the Mexican restaurant, if you're going to the Chinese restaurant, if you're having Italian food, if you're getting Jamaican food, talk about where the foods are from. Talk about the culture, not just the skin tone. Talk about what's special about those countries. Talk about the positive attributes of these people and where they're from and how their culture is rich. Buy different books. Diversify your bookshelf. Diversify the toys, the toy chest, or the toys in your home. Natasha says, so it's so important to use the language that society will use This way, our kids will have an understanding of how others maybe label them. I like that, Natasha. Thank you. That's definitely something for me to think about. We've actually been talking more these days in our family about being Black and what that means. And at first, my kids were like, Mommy, we're not Black. So we had to talk about what that means and what it means to be Black. And so it's really interesting, the conversations that we've been having. And I encourage you to have these conversations in your home. Yes, Natasha, I agree. That's a really, really great point. The society talks about Black and white, and we don't want our children to be ignorant of what's going on. Yes, so diversify your bookshelf. What do the protagonists of the stories that you read look like? So the main characters, the heroes in the story, the person, the little person that the book is about. What do they look like? When you buy books for your kids, you know, unfortunately, the majority of books out there, the majority of the authors seem to be white, and so the majority of the characters in the stories seem to be white. But I am happy to announce or happy to report, just walk into your local bookstore. The bookstore that comes to the top of my mind right now is Chapters. Even before all of this racial reckoning that we've been going through, they have had excuse me, they have had some diverse books with diverse authors and diverse heroes in the books, and not just Black. I'm thankful to be able to say that they have different kinds of characters in their books. Their stories of First Nations peoples, their stories of Asian peoples, their stories of Mexican peoples, their stories of Black peoples. And I would encourage you, if you are Black, grab a handful. If you are white, grab a handful. Look at the toys that your kids play with. Are they all white or are they all Black? I would encourage you to mix it up. Quite often, my Black friends will say, I only buy Black dolls for my kids and stuff. And I think that's great from a place of empowerment, but I think it's important to mix it up because our society isn't all Black and our society isn't all white. And it's important for what our kids experience at home in terms of their imagination and their toys and their books to reflect the wider community. Natasha says, at Knowledge Bookstore is amazing. I'm actually going to write that down because I didn't know about that. I was actually going to say A Different Book List. That's a great store that, I'm just writing that down, guys. Knowledge Bookstore. A Different Book List is a really great place as well. They have some lovely books. Diverse. Rashida says, yes, diversity is key. It's important for our kids to know that they can be seen in the toys that they play with. And I encourage you as parents, as aunties and uncles, as godparents, as grandparents, when you go to the store, if you do not see the toys that look like your kids or that reflect society, hey, Marcy, if you don't see that, ask for it, right? I was shocked in the winter. I think it might have been around October or so. I went into Walmart, and I'm always looking for little toys to help me with my play therapy stuff. And I was looking for a little Black doll and a little white doll because I was doing something specific with a child. And I looked in the doll section, the section where, you know, baby dolls that use like a bottle and wear like diapers and whatever. Every last one, except one, was white. Hey, Nicole. And at the very bottom, in the far left, there was one little Black doll. And it took me like a good 10 minutes standing there in disbelief before I could find it. And I grabbed up that doll. And what upset me was when I picked it up, there was none left for anyone else, right? So I picked up that doll and I walked straight off to the manager. And I said, what can we do to fix this situation, right? Don't be shy to ask for what you need. Ask for it in the bookstore. Ask for it in the toy store. Is there a way that we can have your merchandise reflect our society, right? I live in a neighborhood that has a lot of Black people, right? And I was very appalled, shocked, and dismayed that there were very few in terms of toys that reflected my children or other people's children, to be honest. Even if you're white and you wanted to diversify the toy chest at home, you couldn't in the Walmart that I went to. So I think it's really, really important that we ask for what we want. Once they know that there's a need, then hopefully they will fix it. Hey, Jermaine. Yeah, I mean, Natasha is saying good for me, amazing for me to do that. I mean, some people may not feel comfortable, but it's really, really important. If we don't say that this is important to us, listen, this is where we're spending our dollars, right? These people are getting rich off of us, right? And if they are not supplying what we need to let them know, or we're just going to shop somewhere else. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention about this is that this is not just a black issue and a white issue. This isn't about dichotomy here, right? We live in, in the States, they talk about a melting pot. In Canada, we talk about multiculturalism. Canada has a wide array of people from multiple countries. In the general area, there are multiple languages, right? And so we need to acknowledge that there are people who are in the middle of this conversation who may not be black and who may not be white. And they may feel like there isn't a place for them here, but there is a place. There's a place for absolutely all of us. And I think that while what's making the news right now is the challenges that black people might be having, Chinese people are having issues too. Indian people are having issues as well. People who are non-white are having challenges. And while those challenges might vary, right, not everyone's issues are the same, we still need to recognize this. Okay, I already spoke to the discussion being age specific. I'll just mention that again. If your child is 4, you do not need a conversation for a full hour. But if your child is about to vote, you do need to talk about it. And it's okay to say to your child, especially your teenage child, man, I really don't know what's going on in our world. And it is okay to say, I am just as dismayed as you are. It's all right to say, what's happening right now is not okay. And I feel broken up about it. I don't know what the solution is. But then you can say to your teenage child, what do you think? What do you think we should do? What do you think about what just made the news? How's it making you feel? It's important for them to know that they can come to you as a sounding board. Natasha says, yes, anti-racism in person of color communities, right. Nicole says, we have to be honest in an age-appropriate way. I know your 2 boys who are very curious and you're always so capable in breaking down the issues of race so they understand. Thank you. Your children need to know that they can come to us about this issue, because as much as we are feeling angry and we're feeling grief and we're feeling confusion and helplessness, we are grown adults, man. We can drive and we can vote and we can do all the things. We can go out and get the job and pay the bills and do all that. And if we are struggling with those emotions, imagine your 15-year-old who's trying to make sense of this. Imagine your 18-year-old who's trying to make sense of this. Sit down, have those conversations with them, and remind them that, allow them to realize that just because we have this conversation, it's not one and done. It doesn't mean that we have this conversation and the door is closed. We have this conversation and the door remains open. You come on in and we have this conversation whenever you need to, right? Let them know that you are available to have this discussion. It helps them feel a little bit less powerless, right? It helps them to recognize that they have strength from you and that they can muddle through this as long as they're muddling through it with you. Let's see. Keep it age specific. Keep the door open to the conversation. Yes. What if other family members hold different views, right? I have white friends who are as woke as they come, but they have grandparents that are of a different mindset, right? What do you do when you are trying to push the needle forward as a white person or as an ally, and your own parents are stuck in a different mindset? and then they come over for Thanksgiving dinner and want to talk race in front of your 9-year-old child. What do you do with that? I say challenge it in a loving way, right? You can say things like, in our home, we're teaching Peter to blah, 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 blah. Or that we don't talk about things like that here. Or we have lots of friends of different nationalities, of different races, and we treat all of them with the same dignity and love like we would treat you, right? It's important for your children to see that you're challenging it in the home in love, because then you're modeling for them how to challenge it when they're outside of your home, when they are on social media with their friends, when they're on the Zoom chat, when they are, I don't know, Snapchat, TikTok, you name it. They need to know how to handle it. And they might not say anything, but they're watching you and they're listening. They are observing very, very keenly. And you have to model how to challenge this. If you, as an adult, let your borderline racist parent get away with saying that, and then you're talking to them about how Black Lives Matter, and then you're talking to them about how we can change the status quo, they're not going to want to listen to you. They're going to think you're a hypocrite. So don't be a hypocrite. I'm not calling you names, guys, but I'm just holding your feet to the fire. Let's see. There are lots of authors out there. I'm just mindful of the time. I try not to keep you guys much longer than half an hour, but I'm just realizing that it's 8:38. Megan says there's so much power in modeling this behavior and conversations. Yes, there is. And Megan, I know that your boys are so lucky to have you parenting them. They're going to be learning so much from you. One of the other reasons that we need to have this discussion with our children is because they need to know that there is space for them in this world. They need to know that there isn't a place where they cannot occupy space, right? Maybe it's because I was raised in the Caribbean where everyone else is Black, but I fail to believe there's a space in this country that I can't kick the door down and walk into with my full Black self, right? I think that our children have to know that the status quo as is in terms of the systemic stuff, that needs to be eradicated. As a friend of mine said the other day, our ceiling needs to be their floor. So the issues that we are fighting now, I don't want my kids to be fighting when they're in their 30s and 40s. I want it to be so much better. And I want the issues that they're fighting to be a lot less intense, right? What else do I want to say to you before I let you go? I feel like there's stuff I'm forgetting. But DM me. I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But this is really, really important. It's really important for us to talk about it. It's important for our kids to hear that we are not comfortable with things the way that they are. It's important for our kids to understand that Black Lives Matter. It's important as if you're white, it's important for you to show up for your Black friends. If you don't have Black friends, that's a problem. Get a few. Call me. We'll figure it out. Join different groups and associations, but it's challenging for your kids to understand that Black Lives Matter if you don't have any Black lives in your life. Do you understand what I mean? Mix it up, diversify it, help your children to know that what you speak is what you also live, right? Help them to realize that you talk the talk and you also walk the walk. Show up for your community, right? The Black community is your community if you're white. I'm Black and the white community is mine, right? We're all in this together, guys. We're all in the same storm. We might not all be in the same boat, but we can share resources. Today, this is a day of Google College and YouTube University. So if there are terms that you don't know what they mean, look them up. Natasha is saying Cujo's Kids Zone on YouTube. They have an episode on Black Lives Matter. Yes, look it up. Sesame Street has some also also has some really great resources. In this day and age, it's July 2020. There is absolutely no reason that we should stay ignorant and uninformed. Um, Look it up, get the knowledge, pass it on to your children. Let us fight this fight. Thank you guys for joining me. DM me if you have any questions. I'd be happy to continue this conversation offline with you. And don't forget to join me next Wednesday at 8 right here for more Afterthought. Cheers. Bye.